following interview is a production of the Financial Survival Network. Go to KerryLutz.com. That's KerryLutz.com and sign up for your free financial survival toolkit and get our complimentary newsletter. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to 1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. My next guest, Simon Black, is a student of the world and believes that travel is your greatest teacher. His pledge is to help you achieve true freedom, to help you make money, control your time, and eliminate the mindset that you are subject to a corrupt government that is bent on degrading your personal liberty. And that is what his site, sovereignman.com, is all about. Simon, welcome to the Financial Survival Network.
Thanks, Kerry. I appreciate the invitation.
Hey, we appreciate your being here. I know you're overseas right now, and you seem to be a nonstop traveler.
That's right. That's right. I'm in a beautiful place right now up in the Austrian Alps called Zell-am-See. It's about, I guess, 2 hours south of Munich, way up in the mountains, and easily one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Lucky you. Well, yeah. I'm here in White Plains, New York, looking out my window at the traffic.
Okay. All right.
So Simon, you've been traveling for quite some time now, haven't you?
I have. I'm what you call a permanent traveler, and what that means is I don't have any fixed base. I don't really have a home, and I just go from place to place depending on I'm always following some kind of opportunity, maybe an economic opportunity or investment opportunity or business opportunity. So I'm constantly kind of moving around the globe, going various places, from Chile to Thailand to Andorra and every place in between. So I might hit usually 40 or 50 countries a year, maybe more than that. And I've been doing this for several years now.
So you're really a citizen of the world.
I certainly am. That's what I consider myself to be. And I don't really believe in things like, people get so caught up in nationality and nationalism, and really these are just accidents of birth. I mean, when you think about it, this is just this complete fluke that maybe somebody like you or I happen to be born in the United States of America and somebody else happened to be born in a place like Belarus. These are just accidents of birth, and I don't think they're necessarily worthy of labeling ourselves for our entire lives. There's a great big wide world out there and a lot of opportunity for everybody. And I think that sort of labeling ourselves as one specific thing and sticking to that is, you're really missing out on a lot of things.
Yeah, I've been to probably about 25 or 30 countries, and I totally agree with you. And the thing that I'm seeing that's amazing is, the standard of living in the United States used to be far and above the highest in the world. And what I've seen recently is that a lot of places are catching up. Some are even surpassing us. And if you factor in freedom of the individual to pursue happiness and liberty and property and all that stuff that the founding fathers referred to, there's countries that are well ahead of us now, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned something that I believe is, say, travel is the greatest teacher. And what I mean by that is, people get kind of indoctrinated. They're inundated with a bunch of garbage, particularly in the U.S. on mainstream media, television, and magazines and things like that just fill their heads with a bunch of erroneous beliefs. And when you actually get out there and put your boots on the ground and see the way people actually live in different parts of the world, you see things with your own eyes, and it's completely changes your perspective on things. Totally and completely changes your perspective. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the standard of living in the United States is falling. The standard of living in other parts of the world is increasing. But more importantly, I'd say that in a lot of parts of the world, you actually have a greater sense of personal freedom. And that's something that's really very interesting. The United States, I think, still wraps itself up in this blanket of being the land of the free and home of the brave. But really, it's nothing more than a bombastic statement at this point when you consider, just the erosion of civil liberties over the last several years has been absolutely incredible. And, so really a lot of these freedoms that people still think they have in the United States, they're myths. It's just a dream. It's all in the past. And the things that I see around the world, constantly in different places that I go, very interesting stories. And there's a lot of, even with all the bad news and the doom and gloom out there, there's really a lot of good news stories all over the world. A lot of really exciting opportunities.
So, where do you think the freest country in the world is today?
Well, it depends on how you kind of qualify that. There's places where there's a lot of economic freedom. I still think, for example, a place like Hong Kong is probably one of the freest places in the world, particularly from an economic perspective, where you can do just about anything that you want to do. They have a territorial taxation, where income that's not sourced from within Hong Kong is not taxed, and the government is constantly going out of its way to reduce tax rates, and they run a budget surplus and all these types of things. It's a very, very sound and healthy economy, and it's based on the principles of economic freedom, not central planning, central control, but based on letting the market sort things out. And so, that's one really, really great place.
I remember Milton Friedman. I don't know if you ever caught that special. Him and his wife did Free to Choose. That was their poster boy for economic freedom and the way that it can lift humanity out of sheer poverty and into unimaginable prosperity. And I remember going to Hong Kong, staying at a magnificent hotel, far superior to anything I've ever stayed in the United States. And I've stayed at lots of nice places. It was the Regent. And it had this view of the harbor and these blinds, which at the time were rare, on an electric motor that opened up and you looked out. And you had a butler and you flicked a switch and the guy was there like in a nanosecond. And, I looked and I said, this was years after I had seen that special. I said, Milton Friedman really nailed it. Where there's economic freedom, where there's respect for property that's embedded in the law, and where there is limited government that takes a relatively minor share out of people's earnings, anything is possible. And you mentioning that now just brought it up. And you mentioned Chile a lot, and that's a place I've really been anxious to see. I've been to Panama. I see what's happening there. And a lot of these countries just took the values that were embedded in our founding documents and ran with them, and really are going to surpass us at some time in the future.
Yeah, many of them already have, as a matter of fact. There's one thing to look at, for example, GDP per capita rates, that are published by the International Monetary Fund, but really, let's be honest, the IMF has been a complete failure since day one, and there's very little that these guys do that's actually accurate. So you can kind of quote statistics and publications, by these official organizations, and the World Bank says this, but these people have no idea what they're talking about. They're a bunch of bureaucrats. They're pencil pushing pinheads. They have no earthly idea what it's actually like out there. All you got to do is get on an airplane and go see for yourself. And when you actually see for yourself, you see that a lot of people in these, quote, developing countries have these incredible standards of living. They live, much better lifestyles for cheaper. They have more time with their families, and, they're not so focused where they're working, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, 6 days a week, so on and so forth. They just really, much better lifestyles and standards of living. And, one of the ways that they've done it is, because they do have much more economic freedom. And then the other kind of side of that coin is the personal freedoms you have, where you can go to an airport and not have to worry about being fondled by a government agent, or watching your 5-year-old daughter get the wand as if they're carrying some kind of weapon on board or something. All these ridiculous things now. Sure. The whole thing is a slippery slope where if you do it in airports, why not train stations? Why not bus stations? Why not shopping malls? And these types of things, I think, bleed over into the broader economy as well. When you have reduced civil liberties, I think you end up having reduced production, reduced productivity, and there's certainly something to be said for a place where you have a lot of freedom of all kind. And you mentioned Chile. This is one of the places where for example, when I'm in Chile, I feel that Chile is a place with a lot of economic freedom, but also where I feel very free in terms of my personal freedom, in terms of my civil liberties, and that's a very important issue for me.
Yeah, well, what you're describing, the creeping totalitarianism, is very real. I feel it. And we were talking about Texas. I feel like when I go to Texas, I'm in New York, Texas feels freer than New York. I don't know why exactly, can't describe it, but it seems like the government is less in your face there. But then you go to other countries and they really, as long as you do what you're supposed to, you respect their laws, and you understand that you're a guest, they basically leave you alone and let you do what you want to do. And that's something that that really seems to be vanishing from the U.S. at a rapid pace. And I think you and others have compared it to the frog. If you try to throw him into boiling water, he hops out. But if you put him in a cold pot of water and you turn up a little bit at a time, eventually you'll cook him. And that's kind of where it appears our freedoms are at. They're really getting cooked off at a rapid pace.
I absolutely agree with that. And, if you look at day to day, month to month, we don't really notice any changes. It's like inflation, right? Mm-hmm. You go to the grocery store next week, next month, you don't really notice these changes a whole lot. But when you think back to how things used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago, mm-hmm. you think about what a carton of eggs used to go for, what a house used to go for, and you think about how it used to be going to the airport. We didn't used to take off our shoes.
No,
we did. I mean, we used to. I remember the days when friends and family, everybody used to go through and hang out at the gate, waiting for you to greet you when you arrived, and all those kinds of things. I mean, it's just a totally different country, completely different country. Yeah. And you look at these guys getting body slammed at the Jefferson Memorial and arrested for taking photographs at train stations, all these kinds of things, and in the same way where when we used to remember paying $350 for, an international, round trip plane ticket, something that you can't touch for less than $1,000, $1,500 anymore. So it's just this long-term steady erosion of freedom, just like the long-term steady erosion of our purchasing power of our currency. I think these things really kind of go hand in hand when you have a government that's bent on doing whatever it takes to keep the party going. You see a massive decline in both of these things. And I think people really ought to stop for a minute and think back, not to last month or even last year, but just consider how things used to be even a couple of years ago, and then beyond a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as far back as they can remember, and think how much things have really changed. And it's incredible. It's really incredible.
Yeah, you're right on the money there. I always say I long for the day when I can go to a public building without getting my bag searched, without going through a metal detector. And, we're so far from that. It really is distressing. So, Simon, what do you do to protect your wealth in this creeping totalitarianistic society, if that's the word? And where do you put it? How do you internationalize?
Well, you use a buzzword that I use commonly, this concept of internationalization, and kind of the example I always give is I say, so let's say you're in the United States, you're in upstate New York or wherever you happen to be, right? If you're a U.S. citizen and you live in the United States and you work in the United States and you own your home in the United States and you bank in the United States and you have your investments in the United States and maybe you register your company in the United States and you buy gold and you store it in the United States and all these things, you kind of tie up all of your various assets and interest all within the same place. One little thing goes wrong, and it doesn't even need to be some, massive political turmoil. We don't need to turn into Egypt or anything like that for things to go bad. I mean, just little things, whether you just get on the wrong side of some three-letter agency, because let's face it, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of government agencies, whether it's the state level or federal level, that have with a couple of clicks of a keyboard, they go freeze you out of your account based on any kind of suspicion of wrongdoing. This whole thing is it's a system of presumed guilt until you prove your innocence.
Sure.
And it's really it's the complete opposite of what everybody's taught in their high school civics class and these sorts of things, where we think we're a free society where we're innocent until proven guilty. And that might be true to a degree, perhaps, in some criminal proceedings, but for the most part in these administrative, financial, regulatory issues, if they think that you've done something wrong, they just freeze you out of your livelihood, take away any means you have to defend yourself, and then make you prove to them that you haven't done anything wrong. These are big deals. There's any number of things that happen. Maybe somebody gets divorced, or maybe your neighbor's kid falls in your swimming pool and the guy wants to sue you for $500,000. It is any number of things. It's such a litigious society. The slightest infraction, and I'll tell you, Kerry, the entire country, we really are
the U.S. is a nation of criminals, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages of regulations, and there is not a chance that everybody who's listening to this show, every single person walking the face of the country, is definitely violating at least one of these things, if not a handful or even dozens of them.
Oh yeah, that's average. The estimate is you violate 31 laws from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep every night.
I'm sure.
It's insane.
It's absolutely insane. At any given time, they can just pluck one of these obscure regulations out of thin air and say, "Oh, there you go." Freeze him out, cut him out of his accounts, put a lien on his house, all these types of things. And the thing is that the more desperate, governments get, the more desperate they are to keep the party going, and this happens both at the state and the federal level, the more these kinds of things that we're going to be seeing. We're going to be seeing people getting, liens put on their houses and their bank accounts levied, and all these types of things get tied up. And that's before you even include, the other guy. I mean, the guy across the street who hasn't worked, in 99 weeks and just got his eye on your new car, and so whatever it takes, man. They'll find some reason to sue you or whatever it is, and you have to deal with all these things all at one time. So what we kind of recommend people do. I mean, there's a couple of options. One, you can do nothing, and that's what most people are frankly going to do. And let's be honest, most people are going to do absolutely nothing. They're just going to stand there like a deer in the headlights and get run over by the train coming.
Yeah, they're in denial.
Right. I mean, or they're in denial, or they just, they see the warning signs and refuse to take action. And something I'll never understand about human nature, but I don't put myself in the position to try and figure anything out about human psychology. It is what it is. But there's a handful of people who think, I got to do something. I have the will to act. I know I need to do something. And we advocate a strategy called internationalization, where you literally diversify these various kind of assets and interests, away from reducing what we call your sovereign risk, right? So instead of having all of these things tied up into the same place, you start moving things around a little bit. And you say, okay, well, I've got a big retirement fund, right? I've got a big IRA. Guess what? Most people don't realize they can ship their IRA offshore, and it's 100% legitimate. It's 100% legal, and it's actually pretty easy to do. If you've got a bunch of savings, and you can move your savings overseas to a very safe location, you can move your savings overseas to a bank that isn't some, state-run, state-sponsored zombie bank that's, basically bankrupt and insolvent. The only reason it's still in business is because it gets free money from the federal government. You can do this kind of thing. It makes it easy to diversify out of the dollar. It's actually a safe, sound financial institution, and your money's actually more secure there, so that, again, one of these crazy things happen, your neighbor's kid falls into your swimming pool and the guy wants to come after you, your assets are sitting offshore now. It makes it a lot harder for somebody to go after. It's like the common thief, the guy's going to go around and, if he sees there's 10 cars and one of them's got the door unlocked and all the rest of them have the club on it, like, which one's he going to go for? It's the easy target, right?
Absolutely.
So all you're doing is just making yourself a little bit more difficult. So, I mean, you can do this with a number of things. I mean, people like to buy gold now. I mean, obviously gold has become a really popular thing. And I look at people buying gold and they go and store it at a bank safety deposit box. And these things are basically controlled by the government. And it's happened once before in history. I mean, I know a lot of your listeners know what happened during the Roosevelt administration in the 1930s, and there's no reason to think that it couldn't possibly happen again. And why not put it in a place offshore in a nice anonymous facility in Switzerland somewhere that has a long established history of safeguarding wealth for people, and doesn't ask too many questions about who you are and what you're doing, all these types of things, where you place your wealth and your savings and your gold, and all these things can be in a secure place that nobody can touch, and you can go to sleep every night knowing that you have you have savings, you have wealth, you have protection for all the things that you've worked for your entire life. And honestly, it's a really easy thing to do, as long as people just put forth a little bit of effort is all it takes. Just a little bit of effort.
A little bit of effort, a little bit of foresight will go a long way. Well, Simon, hey, it's really been a pleasure having you on the show. Just tell us how we find you, how we find your site, and what you can do for us.
Well, I talk about these things every day. I've got a daily e-letter that goes out everywhere that I am in the world, whether it's in Austria or South Africa or East Asia, something like that. I'm always constantly writing about the places where I am and what we're doing, and some of these various opportunities to help protect yourself, or even some different ways you can make money. Because again, these strategies aren't just for people who are billionaires. I mean, somebody that's looking for a way to generate wealth, a lot of times it's easier to do overseas, and we talk about these kinds of things. And the website is sovereignman.com, and you can sign up for our free e-letter, and you receive it in your inbox every day.
All right, Simon, we're going to put a link to sovereignman.com on our site, and hopefully we'll have you back again